Hey people, Fernando doing another video for Tomorrow Survival is talking about the food shortages in UK. And yes, you're being lied to. Before I go on, you have the channel full of information. So many years uploading content. It's available just using the search function. You also have my books, Street Survival Skills and Surviving the Economic Collapse. These two are pretty much critical to what you're seeing right now and your level of preparedness. Going straight into this, let's watch this and comment a little bit later.
Choice our ancestors could only dream of. Modern supermarkets have it all. That is, until they don't. Across the country, fruit and veg aisles are increasingly bare. Tesco has joined Aldi, Asda and Morrison's in introducing rationing.
I don't suppose you've noticed vegetable shortages?
Yeah, massive.
You have?
Yeah, just now.
Were you looking for them particularly, or...?
Tomatoes, no, they're a bit insipid this time of year.
I think like everything else, we just go with the flow and see what happens, you know? That's it. That's it.
That's pretty sanguine of you.
Well, what else can we do, babe?
No panic buying, I would say, as yet. I mean, I've not walked in and been like, there's absolutely no food to be had. It's just, you know, potentially buying alternatives or something different.
Shelves at this smaller grocer looked healthier, but not for long. The owner told us his wholesale costs have recently doubled.
There are two main reasons for the shortages. First, bad weather in parts of southern Europe and North Africa.
Really? That's the main reason? Bad weather in Spain? This is one of the favorite excuses. Usually, for whatever reason, there's a thing about from UK blaming Spain for everything. Anything goes wrong, it's probably because something in Spain to blame. That is simply not true. There hasn't been any bad weather in Spain, and there definitely hasn't been any shortages in Spain or the rest of Europe. So that is simply not true. It's just a lie.
Places like Spain, Tunisia, Morocco, which the UK relies heavily on at this time of year for most of our salad crops. Secondly, the soaring cost of energy has meant producers right here in the UK have sharply reduced their own production.
That is true. The price of energy has gone up, and that has affected price. But let's be absolutely clear about this. There's a difference between having inflation and then having to ration food because there's simply not enough to go about. So these two explanations, one of those, the first one he mentions, it's simply not true. I mean, if there's a place I know pretty well, it's the south of Spain. There hasn't been any food shortages. There hasn't been any rationing of any kind. You just go and buy whatever you want, and there hasn't even been news about, oh, this has been a particularly terrible season. It's just not real. It's not true, and definitely not affecting Spain or the rest of Europe.
And it may get worse before it gets better. The UK's largest tomato grower has warned disruption could last until May.
This year what's happened, we've grown the crop, last year's crop later to try and recover some value because everybody's been squeezed on prices for not just energy but fertiliser, labour, everything's gone up. So we've gone later, so we've started later. So instead of starting end of March, it'll be more like the end of April into May.
In response, at the National Farmers Union conference, the Environment Secretary had this to say.
Front page of every newspaper, salad shortages, Asda rationing, that will be happening.
We can't control the weather in Spain either, so...
We can't control the weather in Spain either. Lady, you are lying. It's not that you cannot control the weather. The thing is that there's nothing wrong with the weather in Spain. Notice how, and I want you guys to understand, the social engineering, the lying, the manipulating of public opinion. 2 minutes, 12 seconds. In 2 minutes, they mentioned twice Spain being a problem. Oh, it's the weather in Spain. Oh, no, Spain hasn't got any news even about this being a particularly bad season in food production. And you see it in Spain, you see it in the rest of Europe. It is true, I insist, it is true that the price of fuel has gone down and everything you know, and mostly regarding, things that have been dragged for years now in terms of inflation, destruction of small businesses. This is true that it affects globally. Inflation has affected everyone, but not to the level of, not having enough food. The real reason for this actually has a lot to do with what this lady here actually says.
I keep hearing that Spain is being blamed for the food shortages in Britain, and this is just absolute nonsense. the reason that we have food shortages in Britain and they don't have food shortages in Spain or anywhere else in the European Union is because of Brexit. And
of course, that is by far the main reason why you don't have the same amount of food you used to have, but because it used to be that trucks full of food just flowed into UK without any kind of control, restriction, or any price hike or anything. Just that was the positive side of being part of the European Union. People focus a lot on the things that they don't like. They don't focus enough on the things that actually allow them to stay alive, like food. And this is not me saying it. This is gov.uk. You can go look it up yourself, guys. And it's quite simple. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure this out. Just look up the amount of food that comes into the country. In 2020, the UK imported 46% of the food it consumed. So, yes, prices go up locally, but if you're importing half the food you're eating, then that, of course, has much more of an impact if you're no longer part of that group that allowed you to freely flow food in. It goes both ways. I mean, I was looking for a mug for my wife. There was one that she likes, in particular, a brand. I don't even remember the name, but it's a little hand-painted mug made in UK, right? And the price went up like 30%. It was, and plus shipping and all of that stuff, it was like $60 for a little mug. You know, you go buy your mug elsewhere. There's other options. Now, it's one thing to have that affect you in one direction when it's about buying mugs or whatever the hell it is that you're buying from abroad, and it's completely different when it affects half of your food that you need to stay alive. So why is it that they're not sending? Because it's more expensive. Just transporting food across longer distances is naturally more expensive. But beyond that, you have more paperwork, you have more bureaucracy, you have more stuff that makes it more expensive to you to now export food abroad. It wasn't the case before. It was not exported in any practical sense. It was moving around that free flow that, you know, allowed this to exist in the first place. Now that you have to export food to a different country, it becomes a lot more cumbersome. And they knew this, and they told you that you would be eating wonderful beef from Australia. Bullshit. With the prices of fuel right now, you're going to be buying meat from across the planet from Australia. Remember that? Well, a lot of people apparently forgot it. Of course, it was much cheaper to buy it from, you know, across the pond. It was obviously the best thing to do. But this is something that if you combine the people that were manipulated and lied into thinking that food would be flowing in from Australia just like it did from Spain or France or wherever. If you combine that with particularly harsh conditions after the pandemic and the war in Ukraine and the global financial crisis that we're all very much into, it is a recipe for disaster. And as they say here, things will not get better anytime soon. This is just going on.
That went down badly in a room of farmers who say energy subsidies would have supported domestic production. Until that starts to increase, we're unlikely to see the green shoots of recovery on our shelves. Matthew Thompson, Sky News.
Anyway, there you go, guys. Preparedness, as always, is key. If you have any kind of, you know, food production of your own, you may want to start working a little bit more on that and just adjust. You know, you're looking at something that was 100% predictable. Anyone with any common sense would have realized that the moment you have to pay 25-30% more for the food that half the country needs to stay alive, yes, that would be a big problem, okay? But it's not that the rich are going to be starving, you know, or even the middle class is going to be starving, or pretty much a lot of people you will be fine. The problem is poverty. When you have food prices going up, this translates into more and more poverty. And there's way too many people already struggling. I mean, there's other clips. I encourage you to look them up on YouTube. But there's people that are relying already, a lot of people relying already on food banks. And they're saying that they find less and less each time they visit and try to get something to eat. Guys, that's going to be all for now. See you in our next video. Take care.